Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode and I have a topic I want to dive into. And basically what I want to do with this is a continuation off of my maintenance calorie talk. A couple weeks ago, I discussed what can and can't happen at maintenance calories. So what I'm going to do here is talk about what are maintenance calories, how most people underestimate their maintenance calories, and how that can become problematic, aka artificial maintenance calories, what can impact our maintenance calories, and then what we can do to have a higher maintenance calorie range, and then some questions around that. And then at the end, I'll always go over some ways that that can help you find your maintenance calories there. Before I dive into that, though, I just want to go over how you can support the podcast. So I have my free body recomp checklist. In that, I go over 10 things you need for a body recomp. What is body recomp? Two different types, different training splits, the importance of body comp over just scale weight. So if you're interested in that, the link to that is in the show notes. So let's dive into it. So like I said, definitely reference, once you get done with this, if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to episode 703, where I really discuss what can and can't happen at maintenance calories. Again, I do briefly touch on low maintenance calories, what that may look like. And again, I do go over how to find it. So we're going to dive into that a bit more today, but also go over, okay, how can we also increase that, right? So this will be a practical thing there with that. Real quick, just to understand. So maintenance calories is essentially the amount of calories it takes for your body weight to stay stable. This will also be known as energy balance. And so again, it's to where, hey, you're fueling your body enough. You're not going to see your weight change too much in the short term. I made my case in the maintenance episode that I was just talking about, where over time, if we're doing things right from our input side of things, you may see weight increase over time, but that would still be energy balance in the short term there. So the thing with maintenance calories, though, is a lot of people think it's a permanent number, but they're not. It really is a snapshot of your current physiology, lifestyle, and habits. That's partly why two people of the same weight can maintain on different intakes and why your maintenance can change over time. This isn't a number that we need to, that will necessarily, it's fixed, right? A lot of people think it's, oh, hey, I found my maintenance calories. That's what it's always going to be. But there's some things that will impact your maintenance calories. And there's also things that we can do to help really maximize that as well too there. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about what can impact your total daily energy expenditure. So we have that. And then I want to talk about how most people underestimate their maintenance calories, and that leads to them being in this sort of artificially low maintenance calories and some mistakes that people make there. What can happen, because there are some downsides from staying there and whatnot. And then again, we'll discuss, all right, so we know all these things. What can I do now to increase my maintenance calories if I feel like they're lower than what they are there? All right, so let's talk about what's going to impact total daily energy expenditure. It's really interesting when unfortunately, we can't see this because it's a podcast, but from it all, they basically were able to get a bunch of data on total daily energy expenditure, which is essentially how many calories somebody burns throughout the day, right? So the very common misconception here is that most people just think it's exercise, that is how many calories they burn in a day. Again, there's resting metabolic rate. So what you do at rest, just for basic bodily functions. There is exercise activity, not exercise activity thermogenesis. And then there's also thermic effect of food, right? The amount of calories it takes for you to absorb and digest food. And this graph showed just really how many calories you burn in a day and how it can vary from one person to the next, right? On one part of the graph, there was about 70 kilogram male that was burning upwards of 7,000 calories per day. And then at the same body weight at 70, there was female that was only expending 1,200 calories. So that was obviously the most drastic difference there. But moral of the story is that any one body weight, like, people could be completely different. I would say that the person that was burning 1,200 calories at 70 kg probably didn't have a lot of muscle. They probably weren't very active. They probably didn't eat very well. Whereas this person that was expending 7,000 calories probably had good body composition at 70 kg. They probably were some sort of endurance runner or just had a lot of movement and activity. And then there's probably some genetic differences as well too. And as we'll talk about today, even like prior dieting history can potentially impact this, right? This person expending 7,000 calories probably also was eating a lot more calories than the person eating 1,200, right? As we'll talk about there. That can vary from person to person. So again, let's talk here about this. So the first thing that will impact your total daily energy expenditure, how much you expend throughout the day, which in turn is going to impact your maintenance calories, would be body size, right? When you look at this graph here, like it does trend up and correlate with the higher your body weight is, you're generally going to expend more energy. But as we talked about here, like, body size doesn't account for everything, right? And if your weight change, that obviously is that could potentially change your maintenance calories, right? So where your body weight is at will certainly do it. It makes sense. Someone who is at a higher body weight will just probably burn more calories on average. But as we just talked about, that may not always be the case in there. And it's probably some of the lifestyle stuff that we're doing there. hormones and metabolic health matter, right? So things like thyroid function, testosterone, leptin, estrogen, or insulin sensitivity, these can all impact directly and indirectly how many calories you burn in a day. If we don't have the best practices, again, we have micronutrient deficiency, we have some gut issues, whatever it may be, that could impact our thyroid function. And that's going to slow down your metabolism there, right? From a testosterone perspective, if a male is at a fairly low amount, that is going to be something that will impact how many calories they burn in a day. And it's probably direct, it's probably a little bit directly, but also indirectly, right? Someone that's going to have lower testosterone is probably just not going to want to move as much. They're just going to have less motivation. So it's a direct and indirect thing. But leptin also is a big one, right? So leptin is the satiety hormone. And if that's off, like what you'll see with a lot of people who are obese, they're leptin, they're not very leptin sensitive. Their body doesn't really, it's kind of the same as insulin resistance, right? It's leptin resistance where that signal's there, but the body doesn't really understand what's going on. And that can slow down someone's total daily energy expenditure and obviously lead to appetite dysregulation as well too. Estrogen can play a role, can impact total daily energy expenditure. And these things will directly and indirectly impact how many calories you burn. So a lot of these do come with practices, right? If our practices are off, our body composition is not great, these things will be impacted, right? With testosterone, it's one of those things where it can impact it. Testosterone can be impacted with your body weight, body fat for men. Let's say men, for women too, right? Women still need testosterone. Testosterone is just in smaller amounts, but they still need some testosterone, right? If your body fat is too high, you likely see that most people have lower testosterone, right? And then same thing when their body composition, when they're too lean, testosterone will also go down, right? So both of those things can impact it, right? So body composition is super important here in this. But with hormones and metabolic health, this is why some people burn less than you'd expect for their body weight, right? You take someone who's overweight, but they have poor lifestyle, nutrition, and or exercise habits, that can lead to dysfunction in any of these areas, and they may burn less than what a calculator would tell you, right? You could plug in your weight and be like, hey, here's my weight. How many calories am I going to burn in a day? And it will spit it out at you, but it's not taking into account these things. And so a lot of times people will have lower total daily energy expenditures if these things are off there. Lifestyle and recovery habits will impact your total daily energy expenditure. Again, how many calories you burn in a day. Lifestyle has a huge impact on maintenance calories, things like sleep quality, circadian rhythm, stress levels, overall recovery, having a high stress load on the body. If these are off, energy expenditure can be impacted. And a lot of it does come back to the hormones and metabolic health, right? So it's an indirect thing. Metabolic health's off, hormones are off because our circadian rhythm is off. We're not getting good sleep. We have chronically high stress levels. Our recovery is low. That's going to have those impacts on, again, things like testosterone, right? And then now that's going to have a trickle down effect of now you're not as motivated, you're not going to move as much. Maybe you have more hunger and cravings. So now you're more likely to eat more food. Now your body composition is going to get worse, right? So it's like all these things impact it, right? So a lot of this is direct and indirect things here. Muscle helps, right? So again, same thing here. Muscle is probably directly going to body total daily energy expenditure, right? The more muscle you have, that's likely going to increase your calorie burn, but it's just going to be a slight increase. It's not going to be like thousands of calories, but people with more muscle tend to move more. They tend to train more and they do carry more weight and they have better metabolic health, right? And so all these things can increase your total daily energy expenditure, right? You're in better metabolic health, you have more muscle, so you move more, you train more, and you're just moving more body weight at any one time. So again, it's going to be an indirect thing that's going to impact it. And again, all of these can push your maintenance calories up, aka your total daily energy expenditure. Protein and food intake matter, right? So protein burns more calories to digest. Eating more food can increase the thermic effect of food. So the amount of food you eat definitely can impact total daily energy expenditure and the macros that we consume there. And chronic undereating can lead to lower maintenance calories over time, partly because, yes, you'll see that compensation in body weight, but also undereating in itself can lower it there. Movement and training, right? So obviously more movement training can raise your maintenance calories, but we do need to make sure calories come up with it. And we need to make sure recovery is supported, right? Just because more output without more input is going to be an adaptation downward, right? So if you just move a lot more, but you also don't eat more, there's going to be some adaptation there with that. You're putting a ceiling at how many calories you can expend because of that. So if you move more than you used to, your maintenance calories may change over time compared to what it was when you were more sedentary. So a job change would be like something that you'd see there with that. I do think tracking skill matters as well too, right? How we track is definitely going to impact our maintenance calories because if we're not tracking properly, that could either make it higher or lower there. And again, I've seen both of these happen. People are more likely to underestimate. People are more likely to be under in terms of tracking their calories there. But tracking skill does matter because it's not an exact science. And so that can alter things. Just because you're tracking hey, I'm eating 1,800 calories, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually eating 1,800 calories. It could be 2,000, it could be 2,200. The lower your skill is, the more that could be off. The more you're eating out, the more that could be off. Again, there's a lot of things that go into that. So those are things that will impact your total daily energy expenditure, right? And so what ends up happening, you see this kind of subset of population where people they underestimate their maintenance calories, right? They think their maintenance is a lot lower than what it is. And this is what I would call artificially low maintenance calories here, right? So this is usually people that are trying to stay at their lowest body weight or trying to stay as lean as they can year round, right? They don't want to see their scale weight come up in any like at all. And so this would be someone that's operating at artificially low maintenance calories. And so a lot of it has to do with someone trying to stay super lean, somebody they're scared to see their scale weight come up, or they also think that, hey, because I'm at maintenance calories, my body weight's not moving. I'm at maintenance. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, right? Just because you're not seeing your body weight move does not mean that you could increase them more and get a higher maintenance range there. So what happens here is your body weight's stable. So you assume you're at maintenance, but your maintenance calories are lower than you expect. So you see this and you're like, okay, why am I only eating 1,600 calories? Again, this person probably trains a lot regularly and trains hard, or this person's trying to intentionally stay lean, or even seeing the scale go up 1 pound sends you back to more training and more food restriction there. And so that's someone that's at what I would call artificially low maintenance calories. Yes, your weight is maintained, but it's an adapted maintenance, not an optimized one there. When this in the state, you're often not eating as many calories as you could while still maintaining weight, which often means you're missing out on important vitamins and minerals in that process. You're not going to be in a great place to build muscle or maintain muscle. You're limiting training quality and recovery needed for muscle growth. It's going to be hard to change your body composition when you're in this state. You're not optimizing your metabolism. As we'll talk about, one thing we can do to increase our metabolism and to increase our maintenance calories is to eat more food, which kind of is counterintuitive to what some people would think. And you're just placing an extra stressor on the body. And because of that, there's going to be some adaptations that happen when we have too much stress on our body. And being in a state where we're not feeling enough can definitely lead to that. And so what I see here with this is over time, this can show up as lack of body comp change despite hard work. So this is the person that you're eating 1,800 calories, but things just aren't changing. You're not really losing body fat, but you're not changing your body composition. You just slowly over time just feel worse and things just aren't the same as they were 2-3 years ago. So again, you're working really hard, you're tracking calories, you're just not seeing it. Thyroid and hormone issues, because we are in this adapted maintenance, your thyroid is probably not as optimal as it could be. Depending on your body composition, hormones may not be optimized, right? So you're going to start to run into issues there, which are going to have downstream impacts across the board. You're looking at increased hunger cravings, right? You may find that this is the person that they're restricting normally throughout the week, and then on the weekends maybe things go off track, right? Or you're on plan for a while, but then you inevitably have a week or two or a day or two where you just go crazy with it, right? Or you just stick with low calories throughout and you have those increased hunger and cravings. We're looking at, hey, this person's going to have a lower libido, so checking that out. Lower energy, you're just not going to feel as good throughout the day. Mood changes, we may be a little bit more moodier. Poor training performance, right? It's like, I'm just not feeling like I'm getting any stronger. I'm having trouble recovering. My joints hurt a bit more. Like every workout just feels like a 10 RPE. I'm just working my tail off, but I'm not really getting stronger either. Cardio is not really going anywhere. Over time, I'm seeing my resting heart rate trend up. It's like, why is this happening? I'm working hard, I'm eating low calorie, I'm eating at my maintenance. Why would this be happening? Suboptimal blood work, right? So you may start to see that start to get impacted a bit there. And gut health issues are going to come with this as well too, right? Again, if you're experiencing bloating, constipation, like these are all going to be things that you'll start to see. And that itself will have impacts on your thyroid, that will have impacts on hormones, right? And then for women, this can also mean menstrual cycle irregularities and not optimizing bone health. So two big things that we need to look at. If you take someone that's in that perimenopause transition, going through perimenopause, postmenopause, like definitely bone health is going to be impacted, but all those symptoms that you're going to see in that period of time are going to be worse. And then for men, sorry, I almost had the hiccups. Sorry, I freaking hate the hiccups. We stopped them though. We're good. All right. And then for men, this can show up as suboptimal testosterone, which is going to be, again, the lower libido, lower energy. And you'll see that decrease on blood work and things like that there. Another thing is that I didn't mention, this is going to put someone that has autoimmune issues. This is going to put them at a higher risk of getting those things, right? So again, this can be a tough place to be if we think we're at maintenance, but we're not eating enough regularly there, right? So we want to look at these things. So again, if your body weight's not changing, and you feel like you're at maintenance, but all these things are starting to happen, you're likely at the spot where you're at artificially low maintenance calories. And then the tricky part with this too, that can be problematic for some people, is you want to be careful with drastically increasing your calories too, because that can lead to some gut issues, right? Especially if you're already experiencing those. So I found with some clients, and again, I would say the most common, again, this can definitely happen to men, but definitely with women, right, that have been on a low calorie intake, maybe you're experiencing some bloating, constipation, things like that, and you just try to ramp up calories a ton. And usually this population is going to increase their calories via dieting foods, right? Like cauliflower rice, things like that. And then boom, it just freaking makes things worse and they can't eat more calories. And then they go back down and they get stuck in this vicious cycle here. But then you can't really decrease your calories anymore. You're not going to be, you're just going to continue to exacerbate these issues, and you're really not going to be able to create a meaningful deficit here. So this can be a tough place to be in. And so, like I said, another issue that staying here often makes future fat loss phases harder, not easier. When calories are already low and recovery is compromised, there's less room to create that meaningful deficit. Like I said, fat loss is going to stall sooner. So it's, even if you are able to get into a deficit, it's going to stall sooner. And if you're already on the leaner side, it's like, where are we going to go from here with that? And biofeedback is going to break down faster, right? You're just going to have a harder time if you're in this state and you try to, it's like you've been eating at maintenance, but then these symptoms are popping up and you feel like your maintenance calories are on the lower end. It's like now you try to go into a deficit, you're going to see the lower energy quicker. You're going to see the increased hunger cravings quicker. You're going to run into those thyroid and hormone issues sooner. You're going to have that lack of body comp change sooner. Training performance is going to suffer sooner, right? All these things will creep up a lot sooner. And so you end up spinning your wheels from a body composition standpoint while overall health slowly starts to suffer over time. So it's like two different things. You're not changing your body comp, but your overall health long-term is also starting to suffer. And again, the real big concern here, especially for women, is going to be the bone health side of things on there. Because from my understanding with that, once you start to lose that, you're pretty much not going to be getting that back. Whereas you lose a little bit of muscle, you could get that back. Yeah, we don't want to go down that hole, or down that road, but we can recover from it. Whereas like bone health, getting in that state is not going to be good. So again, this isn't a crisis in the short term, okay? But long term, it's again not going to be a great place for overall health, performance, building muscle, improving body composition, or again, setting yourself up for successful fat loss phase later. This isn't a holy crap, I have low libido, like I'm screwed, like I'm losing all my, no, that's not the case. The longer you've been here, the more problematic it's going to be. The worse these symptoms are, the more we need to look into this. But again, it's not a crisis in the short term, right? And so that's why for some people, they're so scared to go under, say, 1,600 calories. Oh, that's terrible. It's not bad. Again, it's not necessarily what we want to do for everyone. It depends on the person, but it's not a crisis in the short term. There's definitely time and place for lower caloric intake. It's just that long-term exposure. What does that look like there? So if you feel like you have to eat very low calories just to maintain your weight, this may be what's going on, right? And consider tracking skill is super important, right? So that's the thing here, right? Calorie tracking isn't perfect and most people underreport intake. So this always needs to be looked at in context and why it's important to look at other subjective and objective markers, right? If you're eating 1,800 calories, you're tracking 1,800 calories and you're not having any of these issues, like you feel really good, you're seeing body comp change still, like you're building muscle, performance is good, libido's great, your blood work's great, you're not experiencing gut health issues, thyroid feels like it's good, you don't have a ton of hunger and cravings, like crazy ones, menstrual cycle's in a good spot, men, you get your blood work done, testosterone's in a great spot, you have that motivation, it's okay, you're probably good, right? I would look at your tracking skill and see if you're off by 400 calories, right? Because if someone's tracking 1,800 calories, they're not having those things. It could just be one, maybe they don't move a lot and that is their maintenance calories. But if you're eating, sorry, before I go on to that, if you're tracking 1,800 calories, maybe you're not logging as many sauces. Maybe you're overlooking things. Maybe you go out to eat regularly and there's just maybe some things you're missing. It's okay. Maybe that's going to account for an average of 200 to 400 calories per day. And so now your maintenance is closer to say 2,000, 2,200. I still think that could be on the lower end for some people, but that would start to make a little bit more sense, especially the leaner you are and the lower your body weight is. That's why I think looking at your biofeedback is just so important in this process there. But again, most people, like that's going to be problematic for, again, those people that are, where the people that are going to get stuck in this kind of state are going to be, again, the person that is scared to see their scale weight come up even a pound. You're trying to maintain your absolute lowest weight and leanness all year round. You train a lot and hard, right? Like those would be the biggest people that would be at a higher risk of being here at this spot. All right. So now that we talked about what is maintenance calories, what impacts your total daily energy expenditure, how a lot of people are like, could be at their artificially low maintenance calories, what happens here, who's at a higher risk of being there. Let's dive into, okay, what can we do now to have a higher maintenance calorie range and how can we get it a bit higher there? So again, definitely look at your tracking skill. I think that's super important. There's some easy things that people overlook there, but again, if you're at a low intake, lower than you think it should be, and you're experiencing some of those things that I was discussing, let's look at some things that we can do to increase our total daily energy expenditure here. So first, we need to look at overall movement, right? Yes, obviously training a lot is important. Just because we train an hour a day, like what do we do outside of that? If you're sub 8,000 steps, I think you have some wiggle room to increase your total daily energy expenditure, right? Definitely look at that. Now, the trick with this is as you start to increase your overall movement, you do need to increase your calories with it, your calories in. That's the biggest mistake I see people make, because a lot of times now, like that person that I was just talking about, where they're scared to see their scale weight come up at all, they'll increase their movement and then it's okay, cool, this is a way to stay leaner. And then they do that. And then now they start to adapt, right? Their body, because again, the larger that gap is from your calorie intake to what you're moving, there's going to start to be some adaptation, right? And again, that just comes down to now you're not getting as much out of the movement that you're getting. It's going to lead to recovery issues and all those things that we just talked about. We need to look at movement there. One, we need to look at eating more and taking time away from fat loss dieting. If you're at 1,800 calories, you're experiencing those things, let's start to titrate your calories up a little bit. Do it slowly, especially if you're experiencing gut issues, right? So it's like, hey, go from 1,800 and push up to 2,000 and see what happens, right? Because when we eat more, because we're eating one, we can increase NEAT, right? Like your body will subconsciously increase NEAT there, right? So just by increasing your calories, your body becomes more wasteful with energy. In most people, that's not always the case. We'll still have to watch it, but that can happen. But as we talked about earlier, one thing that's going to increase your total daily energy expenditure is how much food you eat. So by eating more food, we can increase our maintenance calories. So, now in saying that, in the short term, you may see your scale weight come up a pound or two, but that's not bad. That's not fat gain. Anything in the short term like that, is not going to be fat gain. We're looking at trends over time. That's going to be the thing we're looking at there. So eating more, but then also taking more time away from fat loss dieting. So making sure we either do some maintenance breaks in there, we do some refeed days, or we just take an extended period of time out of fat loss dieting. Because our body will adapt down from a body weight perspective, but then all from how many calories we're eating will start to adapt down, right? And that's where people can get into that artificially low maintenance calories as their bodies adapt down. Now, the cool thing is it's not always going to be that way. We have things that we can do to adapt back up. But the key being you might have to be a little bit uncomfortable in the very short term of seeing a pound or two come up there. And maybe you're not going to be your absolutely most shredded. But again, eating more can increase our total daily energy expenditure in multiple different ways there, right? Muscle, right? We want to make sure we build some muscle. And we can't build muscle. It's going to be a lot harder to build muscle at our artificially low maintenance calories. So we need to make sure we get out of that there. And then obviously the more muscle you have, the leaner you are, the tougher it's going to be to add more muscle. But as we talked about, muscle will indirectly increase your total daily energy expenditure, but it will also do it indirectly for multiple different ways as well too. Definitely make sure we go and add some muscle from actual like macros and food choices, making sure we eat around 1 gram per pound of body weight. That can help increase your total daily energy expenditure through the thermic effect of food. So not only can eating more do that, but also protein uses the most energy to absorb and digest. So we can get a small tick up there as well too. Now, the key with that, we have to be careful, is going too high with protein, because then now it could be hard to eat the amount of calories that we need to. And then we won't be able to see that maintenance calories come up, because again, if there's this gap between energy expenditure and energy in, that will slowly start to tighten up there over time as we lose weight, as we lose body. So we do still need to make sure we eat enough calories, and we can't just protein our way there. Fiber as well too, right? So fiber can be something that we can eat more calories and we may not absorb all of those calories. And so you could eat more calories and that could be helpful, right? But fiber is also going to be helpful from a gut health perspective. Now, the key with fiber though is you can't just go up to 50 grams. Like you can't go from 10 grams to 50. And then I think that sweet spot for most people is going to be between 20 and 40 grams. I think once we get over that, now it's going to be a negative. And then same thing, right? Like now we're going to run into more gut issues. And so we can't just fiber our way up either, right? So I think making sure you're within that 20 to 40 grams is important. Improve diet quality, right? So we're not just looking at, yes, we want to increase calories. Some of those we may have to do with foods that are a little bit more energy dense to hit those calorie goals, but just improve our overall diet quality and make sure we're hitting all our micros and macros. Like that's going to be super important, because if we're not hitting all our micros, and again, we can do some of that through supplementation, that can have downstream impacts on how many calories we burn throughout the day. So making sure we have a well-balanced diet, right? Some foods that I would like to see in people's diet each week. We're looking at lean meats, right? Maybe a little bit of red meat in there per week, right? Get some fish in there, some omega-3s, get some nuts, some avocados, fruits, berries, kiwis, apples, bananas, get some greens, get some veggies in different colors of that. Carbs, we're looking at oats, sweet potatoes, some rice, things like that. That's a pretty well balanced diet just right there with that. And then we want to get to a healthy body fat range, right? So again, with muscle, that can help keep our body weight a little bit higher, which we know a bigger body is going to expend more energy, but also getting to a healthy body fat range. So we're looking at, hey, let's get you to about 10 to 20% for men. If you want to really increase your energy expenditure, if that's, hey, I want to just eat as much, I want to try and maximize my maintenance calories as much as possible, you could probably be closer to 15% with a good amount of muscle, and you're talking, hey, your body composition, your body weight, you're going to be able to maintain a higher body weight. And that in turn is going to increase your total daily energy expenditure because of that, right? So for men, we're looking at 10 to 20%. For women, we're looking at 20 to 30%. Same thing, right? If you want to maximize how many calories you can eat in a day and try and have more flexibility from that standpoint, adding more muscle and staying above 25% body fat, not really going too far over that 30%. And that's a way to really increase how many calories you burn in a day. And then obviously you're making sure that you're moving more throughout, doing some cardiovascular training. And we're talking, you could get well into the 2000s across the board. Men, we're looking at, you could get well into the 3000s there. And the cool thing is, as you increase movement, you can increase your calories with it. The thing with this would be like, let's say you were at 8K, now you moved up to 10K, 12K, 12 to 15K steps. And you increase your calories with that, like you could continue to see your body be like, all right, we can still be more wasteful with our knee, with our movement, things like that, right? But we need to make sure we have enough muscle, and we need to make sure we're training, and we need to make sure we're at a healthy body fat range, right? Because once we start to see that body fat dip outside of these ranges, that's where we'll start to see those impacts, like I was talking about, where you may not burn as many calories because of some issues going on from a hormonal perspective and things like that. So we want to make sure we maintain good metabolic health. So what does that look like? That looks like, hey, fasting glucose levels around 70 to 90, A1Cs, right? We probably want to be sub 5.2 there for A1C, looking at fasting insulin, right? These are things that we'd want to look at in combination to look at our metabolic health as well too, right? Those are all in good numbers. You're probably in fairly good metabolic health, especially if you're moving, et cetera. And that's going to help you really keep that energy expenditure higher there. Again, gut health, like we want to watch this. We want to make sure that's in a good spot, right? So that's eating enough fiber. It's having strategies in place to support healthy digestion, good eating habits, eating foods that we know sit well with us, avoiding any like sensitivities we have, probably being careful with a ton of artificial sweeteners, things like that, right? Hormone regulations. But again, a lot of the hormone regulation is going to come from good, healthy habits and good inputs, right? Being at a healthy body fat range there. And then another big one, circadian rhythm habits. This is a big one that I see with people is we want to make sure that we have a healthy, regulated circadian rhythm, looking at consistent sleep and wake time, getting sunlight early in the day, less at night. We're looking at probably want to eat more of my calories earlier in the day versus like right before bed. So again, those would be things that we could do there to increase that total daily energy expenditure and keep that high and increase our maintenance calories higher. But I think your big rocks are going to be movement, making sure that's up, but also making sure your calories come up with it, right? So eating more, taking time away from fat loss dieting. We're not having a high energy output with low calorie intake. That's where we'll start to adapt, and we're going to get to that artificially low maintenance calorie range. Eating enough protein, getting enough fiber in, continuing to build more muscle, improving your diet quality, getting to a healthy body fat range, and then doing things that support good metabolic health, right? Like those are probably going to, looking at your gut health, making sure that's in a good spot, and circadian rhythm habits. Those are going to be your big rocks to help get you to this point where you can really maximize your maintenance calories and get them as high as possible there. And so a question on this is, so wait, increasing calories can increase total daily energy expenditure? That sounds paradoxical. And it certainly is. But again, if we're eating more, our body will become more wasteful with movement, but we also can move more and recover from that. And that's the key, right? Because like I said, the more energy you expend through movement, things like that, but you're also not taking in enough calories, again, you'll start to see that your body won't expend as much energy. There'll be compensation, and now your recovery is going to be impacted, which is going to impact your ability to train. So there's just that kind of vicious cycle there with that. So in saying this, there are real limits to increasing your maintenance calories, though, right? This isn't going to be something that you can just like go from 2,000 calories to 8,500 calories. Again, could some people get that high? Potentially. But we run into three real big issues here, okay? So we're looking at time. Again, we only have 24 hours, so you can't move for 25 hours out of the day. So it's like at some point, you can only move so much in a 24-hour period, okay? So we run into a time issue. But then from a recovery standpoint, we also run into an issue there, right? If you did exercise for 24 hours, then you'd be under recovered, and there's going to be some compensation, right? You're not going to be able to keep that up. Like things are going to happen to where you're not going to continue to just be able to move for 24 hours either and train super intensely, right? Because that would be a way. It's like, hey, we just train throughout the entire day. as intensely as possible. And that's a way to see how much we could expend. But you have to sleep, you have to recover. We can't just push it there. And then from a digestion standpoint, your gut can only handle so much food. Again, if you were that person, let's just say hypothetically, you move for 24 hours straight, it's not going to be optimal for gut health and digestion. We have to look into that there, right? And not only do these happen at the extremes, but this can also happen on less of the extremes, right? So I'll go over some examples of what could happen there, right? But in saying that, that's why extreme examples like burning 15,000 calories per day just really isn't realistic. It's just not going to be able to happen, right? Because let's say, for example, you did take someone that their total daily energy expenditure was 15,000. I don't know. I just saw this actually. I think the highest that people were able to maintain on total daily energy expenditure for like multiple days in a row was, I want to say around 12,000, 13,000, at least in terms of what we have numbers on. And I'm pretty sure that was in cyclists there. I think it was. I don't quote me on that, but we're looking at somewhere. If it was north of 15,000, it wasn't much more of that. And so one, that's just not going to happen, right? It's just, you're not going to see that there. But let's say you did do that in the short term, you could probably do that. But long term, you're not going to be able to maintain that because, again, you're going to run into issues where you're just not going to be able to enough for that. And then there's going to be compensation, right? Your body is going to downregulate energy, expend it to where you're not going to be able to sustain that. The only way you'd be able to sustain that was if you could theoretically fuel that for extended periods of time. But like I said, you run into digestion issues, right? Like in order to get that many calories, we're probably eating foods that may over time start to irritate the gut. And then now it's going to be hard to do that. And again, to get 15,000 calories, to expend 15,000 calories in a day, you have to do a lot of exercise. And it's freaking hard to eat that much. You just don't have the time to eat it. And you're not as hungry during that time. So there's a ceiling to this. So I think for most people over 30 who have a family, full-time job, et cetera, maintenance could realistically shift, I think we could do it anywhere from 500 to 2,000 calories, but not much more than that. But on the flip side, it could also be 500 to 1,000 calories lower too than if you're not doing some of these things that we discussed. So we do want to keep that in mind from that perspective, right? You take someone that let's say they've been eating 1,800 calories, they're 130 pounds. For male, male will go 160, 10% body fat, decent amount of muscle. Again, good, like that would be somebody that has great body composition, right? Like for you, and let's say you're eating 1,800 calories to maintain that. It's like, all right, again, at some point we're gonna need to see your body weight come up probably 5 to 10 pounds there. You're looking at, hey, you're gonna get closer to 12, 15% body fat. At that point, let's say they're moving 8,000 steps, we're moving up to 10,000. We could get that person upwards, I think, of 3,000 to 4,000 calories by practicing these things that I talked about, right? But we would want to try titrate it up. I don't like to go straight to just higher maintenance calories. I talked about this in episode 673, reverse diet or recovery diet post fat loss. I like titrating things up for the gut health perspective and things like that. I think that person we could raise up to 3,000 calories plus potentially, right? Female, 130, 15, let's say 15 to 20% body fat. Again, I think putting on 5 to 10 pounds for them, 135, 140, increasing their calories, I think you could get them up to 2,500 to 3,000, depending on how much movement, right? Obviously, if they can keep doing more movement and they're okay with continuing to eat more, I think you could get them up 3,000-4,000 calories, but we're talking pretty high movement. Whereas for people that have jobs, like they have like other things going on, I think we're looking at 500 to 1,000 calories, give or take a little bit more there in terms of what we could actually add to that person, right? And so to find that, what we need to do here is track intake and take your weight at least 3 times per week, okay? Look at your weekly averages, not your daily scale changes. Take 3 weigh-ins per week. You take the average of that for the week, see what your movement is, see what your calorie intake is, and then watch your weight trends over 2 to 3 weeks. See what happens. If it's staying relatively stable, that means you're at maintenance. So now you have this option here of, hey, maybe I'm in a little bit lower than I thought. All right, let's bump it up 200 calories. Maybe get your movement outside of the gym up 500 to 1,000 calories, and then reevaluate and go back and look at your biofeedback, right? Stable weight plus good biofeedback is your likely maintenance, but you could still potentially push it upwards as well too. And I think this comes back to, hey, we just need to get away from being scared of seeing our scale weight come up even just a little bit. So like I said, if it's lower than what you want it to be, this is where we need to look at the things that I talked about earlier, and can we push some of those things upwards, right? So it's okay, if you find a stable body weight, you have this option to push it up more if you have some wiggle room from a movement perspective or a calorie perspective. But again, don't underestimate, like you need to look at your calorie intake and are you tracking correctly as well too there. So just some examples of what we can do from that perspective to find it there. So cool. That's it for this episode. If you found this to be helpful in any way, or you have questions on it, just give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_. That's where I'm most active on social media. So just message me there. I'm looking for clients in the month of February. If you want to test this, you want to try and find your maintenance, maybe you want to push it a bit higher, you need some guidance on it, that's exactly what we would do. So just reach out to me on Instagram and we can chat about it some more, or go to my website. The link to that's there, and you can contact me from my website as well too. And then lastly, if you found this podcast be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and a review, and that will help more people find it. That's it for now. Talk to you guys soon.